Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to install an SSD into your laptop. I have both an NVMe and a normal SSD that we're going to look at how to do that, and also how to clone your operating system from your old drive into your new drive, the software that I use, and to do a fully automated process. It's pretty easy to do if you follow the steps, so let's get right into it. Now I've got this nice laptop, which is an Asus Republic of Gamers laptop. It's got a GTX 1050 in it, it's got 16 gigs of RAM, it's got a Core i7, so it's actually a pretty decent laptop. All things considered, I could play like World of Warcraft or like League of Legends with everything turned up. AAA titles probably on medium high, so it is a really decent laptop. But the one thing that it came with that really wasn't that great is that it has a normal hard drive. There's no SSD in it. So I feel like putting an SSD in there is really going to make the difference between it being, so sluggish that I feel like I need to get out and push, versus it actually being really responsive and fast and quick to load the operating system and quick to load my software. So with that being said, the first thing we got to do is actually just take the screws and open up the laptop. So let's start with that. If you're cloning to an NVMe SSD, you should install the NVMe into your laptop first. If you're cloning your operating system to a normal SSD, you should clone first and then install your hard drive into your laptop. Since I have a NVMe drive, and this motherboard happens to have support for an NVMe SSD, all I need to do is insert it in here, and screw it down. Now, if like me and you're installing an NVMe SSD, which is the little smaller chip, it makes more sense to install the NVMe drive first because you're still leaving your operating system hard drive in your computer and you're just sort of adding a second hard drive. But if you're completely replacing your existing hard drive with your SSD, then it makes more sense to do the hard drive cloning first, and then you take your laptop apart and you install your hard drive into the laptop, your new hard drive into the laptop, because it'll be the only hard drive. So you only want to get rid of your old hard drive after you've cloned the operating system onto your new one. So to do this, depending on what you're doing, see for me, now that I've got both the NVMe and the old hard drive with the computer at the same time, it's actually pretty simple to just use the cloning software to move the operating system over into the new drive, because both are there at the same time. Now, but for the sake of if you're actually moving your operating system to a new drive, but that the hard drive actually sits outside of the laptop before you install it in, then you need what's called an external hard drive enclosure, such as this. I've actually unscrewed the pieces so that I can just kind of show you what it looks like. So basically it looks like the same connectors that you would be plugging your hard drive in when you're plugging your hard drive into the laptop. You have the little same connectors here, and you're actually just plugging in the hard drive into these connectors like this, when you're actually just plugging in your hard drive into the enclosure. It's plugging into the little extra board here, the little chip board here, and then there's actually a USB connector on the other side that allows you to mount your internal hard drive temporarily via a USB cable. See, now I've got my hard drive enclosure, and I've got my external drive plugged into the enclosure, and via USB cable, it now becomes an extra hard drive when I boot up my computer. So then I'll be able to use the cloning software and clone my operating system to either the NVMe drive that's now the NVMe SSD, which is already plugged into and installed into my laptop, or I could have installed it to the external SSD and then taken out my hard drive from the laptop, plugged in and installed the SSD into here if I wanted to replace the hard drive with the SSD hard drive and not with the NVMe drive. Not every motherboard will support an NVMe SSD like that. So it's actually quite likely that you'd have to do this step where you'd need an external hard drive enclosure. I'll link to one in the description below. So now let's turn on the computer and I'll show you the software that I use so that I can clone to either the NVMe SSD or the external hard drive enclosure SSD. If you're installing an NVMe SSD, you do have to partition the disk by right-clicking on your start and then clicking on disk management and just clicking OK with the default options suggested to initialize your disk. If you're using an external hard drive enclosure, this step is not necessary. So you want to go to easeus.com to install the software. You go to the backup and restore section in the menu, and then you click on to do backup free. And you get a 30-day free trial to use the software, and it does everything you need to clone your operating system to another drive. This includes all of the data, not just the operating system, for the record. Once you open the software, you want to use the system clone option, and then you want to click the checkbox near the hard drive that is your target drive that you're cloning to. I've already done it on my end, which is why my NVMe drive no longer is a checkbox by it, because it's currently my operating system. So you just click the checkbox in there, and then you click on advanced options on the bottom left, because you want to also click the optimize for SSD option, and then you just click next, and that's it. Took about half an hour for the cloning to finish. If you installed an NVMe drive, the last step that you have to do is when you reboot your computer, hit F2 or delete, depending on your BIOS, to get into the BIOS to change the boot priority, because you have two drives installed and you want to change which drive that it's going to be loading your operating system from. So by default, it would have been your original drive. So you want to change it to your NVMe drive so that it boots from your NVMe drive. I just went to advanced, and I went to boot, and I just changed boot option 1 to be my new NVMe hard drive, which I can see in the label. It says WD256, so I know that that's the Western Digital 256 gig NVMe. So that's it. I just change it to be boot option 1 to be that drive, and then I do save and exit, reboot, and then it'll boot from the NVMe drive into Windows. So if you were installing to a normal SSD and you already cloned your operating system to it using an external enclosure, now you'd be at the point where you'd actually have to open up your laptop, which you can follow the steps earlier on in the video, to open it up. And then you want to unscrew the hard drive that's in the laptop, and you want to remove the little rails. You can just slide it out by pulling. And then after you've taken all the screws out, and all you want to do is actually take the little metal rails off of that hard drive and then install those metal rails onto your new SSD, and then just slide it in back like that. And then you just screw it back in, and that's it. There's not a whole lot to that process. It's just unscrew it, put the rails on the new one, screw it back in, and that's it. So it used to take about 30 to 45 seconds to load up Windows and get everything fully loaded, and now it takes about, well, under 10 seconds for sure. So that's pretty great. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. See you in the next one.